Alright, so hello everybody. I'm back with another video. I've been away for a little minute, um, but I'm back to labbing, back to my videos, back to the grind. So today I did a S3 static website lab with obviously I created everything with my infrastructure with Terraform. And then what I did with this lab was I created my CI/CD pipeline with GitLab. I set up my YAML file to to automate, that continuous integration, that continuous delivery. And then I completely, created everything from Terraform. My infrastructure is code. And then I actually ran into a problem where I had to create a SSH key because I couldn't get into my GitLab from the terminal, but I didn't want to play in the GUI, so I generated me a new key and then pretty much just added it to my GitLab. So I'm gonna walk through this. I'm gonna walk through this lab, and then I'm gonna show you how my how my AWS not necessarily the website because it was just like a test website. I just used like an HTML file, but here we go. So boom, obviously I have my main TF file. I just created my resource, which is my S3 bucket. I named it static website. And then I created my variables to kind of make it easier. So here's my variables. Description, static website. My is a string. Region, environment. I like to keep up with my environments just to kind of simulate with what an enterprise environment might look like. Obviously, I had to add my providers. So, we have our Terraform required version, greater than or equal to, 1.5. Um, AWS is my required provider. I got my output. So actually, I'm going to run Terraform output. Let's see. Boom, did it go up? All right, go. Yeah, but boom, I just only had one output bucket name, static website bucket. Um, and this is just the website. I can add anything I want inside the website. It's going to be inside of my S3 bucket. Here's my YAML file. So here we got the stages: validate, format, plan, deploy. So validate the syntax, format it. If my code is ugly, plan, to make sure everything is straight, and then deploy. So, this is my YAML file, validate, stage it, then run echo. So one thing I want you guys to know, or a troubleshooting problem I had was, so I'm actually going to show you guys. So what I'm going to do is on let's do Terraform format, right? Boom, I'm going to remove the echo. So I'm going to show you my CI/CD pipeline. So right now, this is my pipeline. So basically, this is my pipeline right here. This is when I first made it. I didn't even run a test. Um, this was before I even had anything in my TF files. And then this right here was I was trying to figure out what's the problem. Like, I already ran Terraform plan on, my VS code, but why is it not working? So, what I found out is, you must put, where is it at? Echo, because it's going to say, hey, what is basically, you know, the YAML file or the pipeline doesn't understand running Terraform format, so you have to put echo in front of it, or it's not gonna work. So before it didn't work, but now it passed, right? So you see recently these pipelines recently passed, and this is just pretty much simulating a pull request. So I go right here. These are my requests. But if I was to create a pull request, say, hey, this is my code, blah blah blah, put it in, then I run through the pipeline, and then usually, honestly, an error is pretty good because it tells you where your code is going wrong. So if I click on here, see, validate went through, format went through, plan didn't work, right? And then I think if I click on here, boom, it tells me job failed, exit code one. So only um, one thing messed up. And if that's all I said, this is why CI/CD pipelines are so important because it only failed one of them. So yeah, so it goes to my main TF file. Everything's good to go. Also made my git ignore where is it at? Boom. To kind of, you don't want any of your state files, your backups, um, your log files, any of that on GitHub, especially when you're trying to do projects. So yeah. Also, while we're here, I'm gonna open up another file. So I'm gonna save my main TIA. Where is it at? Is it saved already? Let's make sure everything is saved. Alright, everything should be good to go. My YAML file's good. Alright, so I'm gonna open up another. So I'll go to so another lab that I did was a three-tier architecture lab. Um, and this was pretty fun. So obviously I have my get ignored right here. So this is my three-tier architecture lab right here. And I really like this lab. I actually created a diagram that I'm going to show you guys in a second. So, I created my public VPC. Then, so I created, I don't want to say public VPC. I just created my virtual private cloud, okay? Right. Then I created my first subnet, which is a public subnet. That's for my application load balancer that's the way that the application is going to be available for users on the internet, right? So then I have my second public subnet right here, right? So the distribution of traffic. So if let's say we have over 1,000 users and one EC2 instance fails, the distribution of traffic can help right there. So I have my private subnet for my database. So one quick thing I want to talk about is during your databases, when you have a database and like kind of a three-tier type of architecture type of thing, you always want your databases to be private. It should never be accessible to the internet because you don't want private files to be accessible to the internet. That's how you know companies lose money. That's how people get you don't want your information all on the internet. Okay. So I have my security group, right? So boom, ingress. We got port 80, which is HTTP, so it's public. So CIDR block everything, um, and that's it. 0.0.0 pretty much means any IP, right? Then we have my second security group rule, which is HTTPS, the encrypted private internet web browser. And then this means pretty much just everything can go outbound. So this means only port 80 HTTP and port 443 can come in, but going out, anything can go out. So think of, security guard. You know what I'm saying? A bouncer at a club. You don't want everybody coming in, but everybody can come out. You get what I'm saying? So then this the web is one the browser that I made for one of my EC2 instances. So like I said, ingress, port 80, 443, and then boom, everybody can come out. And then application, port 8080. So that pretty much means that, like, hey, anybody can go out. Only port 8080 can come in, right? And yeah. So they have my database security group. This is my SQL, so pretty much structural database. Anything can go out. Same thing. Obviously, you need an internet gateway for your application to or your subnet to reach the internet, right? And then obviously you have to have a route table to tell hey, to tell what is going where. So hey, I need my application to go here. I need my public subnet to go to this application, right? So that's when you do route table associations. We got public subnet A, public route table right here, and then we have our private route table where we connect our private subnets and tell them, hey, this goes to the database, this goes to the application right here, right? And then we have our NAT gateway. Obviously, we know our NAT gateway's network address translation is, private IP addresses have their ways to get to the internet. Okay. And then, we have our three-tier application load balancer. So application load balancer type. Obviously, we can add the ALB, application load balancer security group right there. Um, yeah, so this is pretty much that lab. Then we have to do our target groups. Um, you know, right here. I think I even added. Here's my instances. So I have, like I said, I have my web instance right here. Have my application instance right here. A database subnet group. Relational database. So I didn't do DynamoDB for this one. Just because it's serverless. I mean, it's not serverless. So I didn't necessarily care. I wasn't really going for speed and code ran by actions. I was more trying to showcase a three-tier architecture right here. And then that's my database instance right there. Creating my relational database right there where I store everything. I think let me go to GitHub. So let me come here. Blah, 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 blah. And then so this is another lab I had did earlier. But if I go to all my, so that's my serverless URL one. Let's see. Oh, my bad. I have all these repos. Three-tier, yep. I think I did a pipeline for this one, so let's see. Nah, I didn't do a pipeline for this one. Okay. Well, where my VS Code at? But yeah, I had a let me go show you the diagram that I made. Let's see. Okay. That's my URL shortener. But I can walk you guys through this one. So this is gonna be a 301. So basically, my URL shortener lab. I'm not gonna go through the VS Code because it's gonna take up too much time. But basically, it starts with the developer or user. Boom. First thing we do is we add our GitHub. So we add our GitHub action. So basically, you're in the command line. You do your Git in it. Obviously, you do your Terraform in it. You create your files, your folders, all of that. So I create my Terraform folder first. I configure AWS SDK, my software development kit. And then from there, I create my YAML file, right? Boom, I go Terraform init, Terraform validate, Terraform plan. That's my YAML file to kind of make the CI/CD pipeline. And then within that, it's going to run the, Terraform init, Terraform validate, Terraform plan. I create my pull request. So this is just simulating, hey, I have a senior engineer that wants to review my code before it deploys. And then this is what I actually did. So here's my users, right? Obviously, you have the API gateway so we can communicate with Lambda, which is serverless code, right? Run by action. Then we have my DynamoDB right there. And basically, the purpose of a URL shortener is instead of having the super long URL, you shorten the URL. So I really had fun with these 3 labs over the weekend, and I'm going to do some Docker and Kubernetes while I'm studying for my solutions architect. So I'm glad to give you guys another video and talk to you guys later.